And by the way, I understand in this new center, it's providing 24/7 access for transitional space for recovery programming, an in-talk center, mobility access, and space for 400 people. So this is more than just an emergency center. This is a whole wraparound social services for people who need them. But as Mayor Sohi flagged, we are concerned as we go into cold weather that there may be too many people that can't find shelter during cold winter days here in Alberta. And that is why I'm so pleased to be here today to announce that Alberta's government is providing $21.5 million to extend COVID supports to homeless shelters and women's shelters until March 22 right across the province. That is a very significant announcement and an investment on top of the $71 million that we already provided in surge funding to support the homeless population and victims of domestic violence since the beginning of COVID-19 in March of 2020. In fact, one of the very first things that our COVID Cabinet Committee did in mid-March of last year was to authorize $50 million in additional support for homeless shelters and women's shelters because of the pandemic crisis. And we've since added an additional $21 million and today further funding so that we can create additional space. And in addition to that, I'm pleased to announce that we'll be providing $1.5 million to activate up to 200 additional shelter beds at Commonwealth Stadium. We'll also support on-site overdose prevention and treatment services. Last year we did some of this overflow space initially at the Expo Center and then in collaboration with the city at the TELUS Convention Center downtown. And I understand that work is being done to prepare Commonwealth Stadium as an overflow capacity area should it be needed. But of course there are deeper and more complex issues related to homelessness and the social challenges that lead to it. And that's why I'm also pleased to announce today that we are creating a new provincial task force that will bring together the sector that serves the homeless, together with law enforcement agencies, and that's why Chief McPhee is here today, and other partner agencies and service providers, together with representatives of the business community. I know we have representatives here from Edmonton Chinatown Association, and they are affected by and very much concerned about these issues as it affects the community in this area in the north downtown of Edmonton and in our historic Chinatown. So we want to bring together all of the social service agencies, the charities and nonprofits, the municipalities, and the police services to work together collaboratively over the next few months. The task force will start by looking at Edmonton to develop an action plan and a model that can be adapted to local demands and available resources in other communities. Because the measure of any society is how we treat our most vulnerable. And we all share in that commitment, whether it's a great new facility like this that offers more space and better services, or whether it's helping agencies that can better serve their clients. So I want to thank all of the different representatives of community organizations who are here. Once again, thank Bruce and Hope Mission for the hope that they provide to people who are often at a moment of despair and challenge in their life. And I want to thank the Mayor for his collaboration as well as the Chief of Police. And with that, I will hand it over to Minister of Community and Social Services, Jason Luan, to offer some more information on today's funding announcement and the announcement of the Task Force on Homelessness.
Hello, everyone, and thank you so much, Premier, for the huge announcement. We've been working around the clock in the last couple of weeks and really looking forward to today's announcement, so thank you for that. I also want to thank Mayor Sohi. We had a great conversation this past Monday following your meeting with our Premier. I'm so pleased that today Premier announced that $1.5 million support for Commonwealth and many others. This is a great start that province and the community, municipality all working together. And thank you to Police Chief McPhee. I know you and I worked together on my previous portfolio for mental health and addiction. Now you're leading charge as a co-chair for this task force, and thank you so much for you stepping up to the plate and other team members joining us today. Also, I echo Premier said, huge kudos to Bruce, your board of director, all your staff, having this wonderful state-of-the-art facility, adding 400 additional spaces to shelter in a badly needed city like Edmonton. And also on top of that, with a wraparound service, not only providing fundamental basic needs for food, shelter, safe place to live, but focus on treatment recovery, referring people for counseling, and support for housing placement in the community. So thank you so much. I can't be more excited than what Premier already talked about. When I toured this facility 2 weeks ago with you, I'm more than thrilled to see this new addition to our community. So thank you for that. I also want to take this opportunity to give a shout out to all civil society operations in our province. There are over 26,000 of them. What Hope Mission has demonstrated is another great example of when community have care-minded people putting their dollar time into their service, looking after the most vulnerable. They're doing a great service for our community, for our province. So thank you to all of the civil societies across the province for your contribution. As the Premier mentioned, for supporting this center is one of the platform commitments we had. And I want to take the opportunity to acknowledge that our province contributed $4 million into the Herb Jameson development, and also want to appreciate the federal government came in for another $4 million, and the remaining $8 million was raised by team of Bruce team and all the donors and board of directors and staff working behind that. That made it a reality today with a brand new facility like this. So my thank you to all of you again for such a great partnership. In the last 20 months, it's been very challenging for our province, as you can appreciate. The funding announced today by Premier is another step forward to demonstrate that Governor Alberta is helping our most vulnerable Albertans have a safe place to stay and also working towards our province path to recovery. The $21.5 million is critical to ensure that we have adequate space and resources to dealing with the challenge that COVID wave 4 has brought to us, and the winter months is coming with a demand of more support. Of the $21.5 million, $13 million will be spent to expand homeless shelter services, including providing 24/7 services. $6.5 million will be spent for support isolation facilities in 10 communities across the province, including 7 large cities. In addition, $2 million will be spent to enhance emergency women's shelters for service delivery and isolation support. Many of folks know in the community that because of COVID, the escalation of domestic violence has gone way up. With this additional resource injection, we're taking that challenge heads on to enhance the support services to protect women and children who are fleeing from domestic violence, have a safe place to be. In addition to people struggling with homeless, not only we provide 24/7 basic services like a meal, shower, sleep, laundry, but importantly, we take that opportunity to connecting them to get on to addiction, mental health support services, and others, including finding supportive housing in the community. That, in the end of the day, will bring people living in a healthy state and bring people out of this very challenging homeless situation. We're making sure that vulnerable population is protected, that everyone can access vital support day and night. I want once again thank Mayor Sohi for being with us today and also for contributing to the solution. Thank you for your endorsement, having your city manager being part of the new task force. That's a great indication of support, of collaboration, support of multi-government and ministries collaboration on that. And with Premier's announcement of 1.5 million contribution to City of Edmonton to have the Commonwealth Stadium become a new reality, added shelter in our community, this is a big deal. This is a good day for Edmontonians. So thank you for your partnership in that. With all the 21.5 million additional resources adding to our current system, I'm pleased to share with Mayor Sohi and the rest of our folks living in Edmonton that as of today, we will have up to 1,280 emergency shelter spaces in Edmonton. That is a significant injection to the current system that make it more accessible for people who don't have to struggle living on the street, and that they will have spots available for a safe and healthy place to be. I also want to thank Premier again for naming the task force for our homeless sector. I know in the homeless sector, many of community leaders and agencies have been doing great work to pulling part of different strategies from different parts of the system to improve it. But by having this comprehensive task force will bring up all those pieces of work together and elevate that to a future provincial standard. I often call that a made in Alberta solution, how we tackle with homeless here in our province. So thank you, Premier, for your huge support and expedite that process. I'm so much looking forward to working with members of the task force. Within months, we're looking for tangible, meaningful changes happening to the system. And that task force will not only tackle with some of the emergent issues, but also finding the gaps in the current system and create a coordinated, comprehensive response to this homelessness issue. Before I end, I want to conclude by saying my heart goes off to the community leaders, to the nonprofit organizations. For those of you who step up to the task force, I believe there will be 16 of them. They come across from a wide variety of background, from police, from social service agencies, shelter supporters, recovery, treatment facilitators, and others, including Indigenous leaders. This is a new way that we're tackling with this complex homelessness issue, and I'm so much looking forward to the recommendations this task force will bring to our ministry and to inform us with a provincial response to homelessness in Alberta. In the end, I want to echo what Premier said. This work is critical for our government. We want to make sure vulnerable Albertans have a safe place to be and being supported and not being left out. So thank you very much. I'm so much looking forward to the remaining work that's coming out of today. Thank you.
First of all, want to thank Premier Jason Kenney and Mr. Luan for inviting me to be part of this important announcement. I want to start by acknowledging that we are gathered here today on Treaty 6 territory. For me personally, the land acknowledgement is very important. Some of you know my history. I came to this city, this country, as an immigrant, started from scratch and built my life up with the support of the community people in this room who've been so generous in their support for people like me and many others to build our lives here. So it's that acknowledgement is much, much deeper at a personal level. I think a couple of weeks ago, you may not have thought about the great need that we need for shelters because temperatures were fine and people were feeling comfortable. But if you look out today, you know how critical it is that every Edmontonian should have a warm place to rest and put their head down. Because a generous community like ours can do it. On November 3rd, Premier and I had our first meeting. And I'm here to convey my deepest appreciation that within 2 weeks, Premier, you showed up. You delivered what we were asking for. And because of that support, because of that generosity, today and moving forward into this winter, many Edmontonians who would otherwise be sleeping on the streets or in the back alleys or in the river valley now would have a warm place to go to. So thank you so much, Premier. Really, really, really appreciate that. You know, governments don't move as fast, we all know that. But getting this done in 2 weeks really speaks to the commitment that Premier and Minister Luan made. When we met, Premier said, you know, Amarjeet, we take this seriously and we're going to get this done. And they got it done. For this, on behalf of Edmontonians, on behalf of City Council, my greatest appreciation and gratitude. We, as a community, and me as your mayor, I deeply believe in collaboration. I deeply believe that when we put people first, we always find a way to work together. So this is a very good start of the collaboration that we want to build with Premier and his government. Providing shelter space at a time of need is important because it provides their warm place. But it also allows people to triage to services and programs that are needed for people to heal for the long term. So along with this funding, Premier's commitment and Minister Luan's commitment to find long-term solutions, investing in more supportable housing, investing in harm reduction, investing in recovery from mental health, from addictions. Those are the things that we will continue to do together and build on this success of collaboration. So again, congratulations, Premier, for this, and Mr. Luan. Thank you for stepping up for Edmonton. I also want to thank each and every one of you for making this facility a reality. Yes, governments contributed, but you raised $8 million to make this a reality. Now that people can come here and get the support that is necessary. So on behalf of City Council, again, congratulations, Bruce, on this facility, and congratulations to all of you, and for stepping up to help the most vulnerable Edmontonians at a time when we need that support the most. So with that, thank you so much for including me. I'm going to invite Chief McPhee to the podium and say a few words. We're very happy to work with Premier and Minister Luan, and having our city manager, Andre Corbold, be part of the task force. And we are very, very hopeful that through the work of this task force, we'll be able to work toward more sustained long-term solutions to ending homelessness in our city. So Premier, once again, and Mr. Luan, once again, thank you so much for all the support that you have given to us.
Well, thank you for everybody in attendance today. Start thanking Bruce. Job well done. I think it reflects our community when community comes together to make a difference. But it takes a leader to get that done, and you've certainly provided that leadership, so thank you for that. Mr. Premier, Minister Luan, Mayor Sohi, I appreciate the opportunity here to speak today, and certainly for everybody in attendance. Let me start, and I know it's been said here a few times, but thanking the Government of Alberta for their commitment to review minimum standards within our shelter system. These services are vital, in many cases provide the opportunity to give those in need of a chance to enter a better recovery-oriented system and care. And that's not lost on any one of us, or should not be lost. For any system, proper alignment of resources and operations is critical to positive outcomes. Alberta's shelter system is no different. The commitment today clearly sends a signal that the status quo is not good enough. I am excited to co-chair this work with many community partners and people that are committed to delivering change within this environment. The City of Edmonton adopted its standards last year, and now with the province coming to the table, I believe we have the opportunity to use that initial document as a foundation for the work at hand. Personally, as mentioned by Minister Luan, I have recently been involved in the Mental Health Addictions Council and the Human Trafficking Task Force. During both of these committees, we heard firsthand from those with lived experiences that shelter in their current state could be used as a better opportunity to get people the services they need in first instance, much better than they are presently. Before I go any further, Mr. Premier, you've taken on 3 very hard files that haven't been taken on for many, many years, and there's a real similarity to those, and I know sometimes you don't get the credit for that, but it's muchly appreciated by us who provide services. With our committee consisting of shelter operators, business people, community leaders, Indigenous voices, and many others, our goal will be to deliver a product that better serves those in need of the services and that is respectful to those living in the communities that services exist. Through a continuum of services that defines when a shelter becomes housing and when does housing become treatment, knowing full well that it isn't one or the other but integrated services that get the best outcomes for people. Again, thank you, Mr. Premier, for taking this on. Minister Luan, I'd be remiss if I didn't give a special thank you and a shout out to both you and your team for taking and having the courage to take on a very difficult file. To conclude, I am often reminded of words used by a good friend of mine who probably needs no introduction in the Alberta Stakes, that being Sheldon Kennedy, in some of the change that he drove. And he uses this quote often: to know better is to do better. To know better is to do better. All of you here today are leaders, are showing courageous leadership during a time of a pandemic by being open to partner and thinking and acting differently. We are capable of so much more when we act together, and most importantly, when we're accountable together. On behalf of the committee, we certainly look forward to this work. We look forward to bringing back a report that you can take into caucus and to government and both the opposition and the leadership of the province here and say, you know what, it's time that we take the lead, not just in Alberta, but across the country, just like you're doing in mental health and addictions, just like you're going to be doing in human trafficking. The same is for our vulnerable. That's why you always hear me say that it's not one or the other, folks. If we don't hit both of these at the same time in the city of Edmonton, if we don't know what homeless population we're serving, or more importantly, where they're coming from, then how are we going to fix it? We hopefully will be able to deliver on some of that stuff that will make Edmonton a better place to live, raise your children, and certainly be employed and enjoy your lifestyle that we all are so accustomed to. So thank you for having me here today.
Just to start, just on behalf of Hope Mission, I just really wanted to say to Chief McPhee how much we appreciated Hope Mission, the police, and their support to us as we run the shelters. You guys do a great job. We really appreciate you guys and appreciate you and your leadership, so thank you. I was told today there's a special person here that it's her 91st birthday today. So Delkey, where's Del? Happy birthday. Well, first of all, for us at Hope Mission, this is a day to celebrate. It's been a long time coming, and I just really appreciate our Premier coming and being a part of this celebration that we have, the opening of the Jameson Center. Also, Minister Luan, it's nice to have the Minister of Community Social Services and the Mayor. It was nice that the Mayor was able to share a few minutes with us. And we also have an MLA from Fort Saskatchewan, Armstrong Hominick, if she's here. Thank you for coming and being a part of things. And just all of our friends, family, and supporters of Hope Mission. It's just really special to see everybody here supporting us and being a part of things today. But especially for me, I want to thank my wife, Karen, and my 3 sons, Scotty, Stephen, and Andrew. Thank you guys. You're a great, huge support to me. So rebuilding the Herb Jameson Center has, as I say, a dream of mine and Hope Mission's for a long time, going back 20 years actually. And as we stand in this beautiful state-of-the-art building, just to see this dream has come to a reality, it just gives me great joy. I want to thank the federal government and the provincial government for matching the $8 million raised from the community for the Jameson Center, and I especially want to thank our Premier, Jason Kenney, for his crucial role in believing in the project right from the start and helping us to secure the matching funds. So thank you very much, Jason. I want to thank Gary Corzin with VCI Construction. They're the ones that built this building. I don't know if Gary, his wife Colleen are here. Gary, thank you so much. He has 2 great guys that have worked with him, Roland Maggio and Mark Schaefer, and they were here on the site from the time we demolished right to when we opened October 1, and even now they're helping us in regards to any deficiencies or anything, any help we need, and I sure appreciate Mark and Roland. So thank you guys for that, and Gary for your team. The project was completed on time, as we said, and on budget, taking only 22 months from demolishing the old building to opening the new one. Even with the challenge of building during a pandemic and experienced supply chain shortages, God is so gracious, and I just thank God for how this all came together. And raising the money that we needed, it's just incredible. I just praise Him for that. I would also like to thank the Board of Directors for Hope Mission, our Chairman, Jim Skinner, our Vice Chair, Jim Odershaw, also the Building Advisory Committee that we had, business people, contractors, developers that came and helped us as we went along the way, and of course all the staff of Hope Mission. It's an honor to work alongside everybody. They've been just a great encouragement and a great bunch of people, so thank you for that. And then finally, to the 4,600 Albertans who came alongside us and wanted to provide safe, warm shelter in Edmonton. And I just am amazed. We raised exactly what we needed to, $8 million, and get it matched by the 2 levels of government. So thank you to the supporters of Mission across Alberta, and to God be the glory. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Bruce. That concludes today's formal portion of the event, and we're now going to move over to a media Q&A. Just for journalists who've gathered here in person, because it's a little bit tight, I'd ask that you just remain seated until the podium is open, and then just swap with the person in front. And just a reminder to please state your name, the outlet you're with, as well as who you're directing your question to today. Go ahead.
Thanks, Harrison. Brianna Carson-Smith with Global Edmonton. Premier, this is, aside from the task force, it's temporary funding that will only last until the end of this winter, so I imagine we'll be back here this time next year looking for millions more. What is the provincial government going to be doing on a long-term basis to solve this problem going forward?
Thank you. Well, and before I get to your very good question, I just wanted to say happy birthday, Del. I'm going to have to check your ID, though, afterwards. I cannot believe you're 91. And secondly, Hope Mission is 92. So your lifespan has covered that of this amazing organization. I think there's something very, very special about that. And also, I should acknowledge and thank MLA Jackie Armstrong-Humanyuk for being here. She has a real heart for the issues that we're dealing with here today. So first of all, a very good question. I would say that Alberta does provide important ongoing funding to support the homeless population. Jason's ministry provides $50 million to operate homeless shelters in 8 communities and over $89 million in community-based organizations in Alberta to support the homeless. And this is all emergency funding on top of that. That's COVID-related because there is a larger homeless population. There's spacing issues, public health orders that have made it all more complicated, sometimes isolation shelters that we need. Of course, our Department of Seniors and Housing also provides tens of millions of dollars in support for affordable housing, and we continue to expand that. For example, in the current fiscal year, we have operating funding of $84 million to housing providers, including $5 million for groups like a number of groups that are providing affordable housing. The capital plan in this year's budget provides for $77 million in Edmonton to build an additional 360 affordable housing units and 350 shelter spaces, including $7.5 million for capital maintenance and repairs. So there are ongoing supports there. What we're dealing with now, what Mayor Sohi asked me for, was some emergency support for a very acute short-term problem that's driven partly by the COVID crisis. So we all hope, I know, that with our higher rates of vaccination that we will see a gradual diminishment of the COVID threat, and that will cause the implications for the homeless population to diminish over time. And so hopefully a year ago we won't be dealing with the same acute crisis that we are now. But that is also why we're appointing this task force, co-chaired by Chief McPhee, with the involvement of Edmonton City Chief Administrative Officer, to give us advice on collaboration on the longer-term challenge of homelessness. So, bottom line is, we continue to be a major funder of the broader system, including building permanent housing units. We recognize, but these issues are complex because they are related often to addiction and mental health challenges, sometimes to social disorder, and where law enforcement comes in. We need to put all of that together as we develop a more comprehensive strategy.
Here's, I wanted to ask you about the AGM. We have 2 MLAs who have written formal letters with their concerns about the AGM. One saying that third parties are paying for basically friendly faces to show up this weekend, and another saying the bylaws will be amended to require 29 constituency associations instead of 25, calling for a leadership review. So will this be a legitimate AGM coming up this weekend?
Of course it is. Very much looking forward to my party's AGM. First time in a couple of years we'll all be able to get together in the same room and get reconnected. I understand that over 1,000 people have registered to date. Looking forward to a discussion about the province's future at a critical juncture as we move into strong economic growth in Alberta. In terms of motions, we have a very democratic process. Constituency associations put forward proposed resolutions. They then go through a policy and governance board that does combine similar resolutions, and then they go to the membership for an email online consultation, and the members indicate which are their preferred resolutions. So the one to which you are referring came out of that democratic process. I guess it's certainly worth debate. It's a minor change in the party bylaws. That's what happens. That's the process. It's a democratic process, a fully transparent process. I'm not surprised that political organizations are being involved in a political convention. That's not new. Of course, we expect that they follow all the necessary rules and guidelines.
Shaylan Skalski with CTV News. Question for the Premier and/or the Minister. A City of Edmonton report released earlier this week outlined that about 2,800 people in Edmonton were actually in need of shelter. Also acknowledging that about 1,600 of them preliminarily housed with family or friends, but obviously in a vulnerable situation could slip back onto the streets at any time. Does this plan acknowledge that there aren't enough beds to accommodate them?
So thank you for that good question. In terms of the number of prevalence of homelessness in Edmonton and other communities across the province, there are ongoing debate in terms of how we have an accurate number there. As you can appreciate, this population is very much fluid, and many of them have no IDs. It's very hard to pinpoint exactly the number. I can tell you that from my department briefing to me, in Edmonton region last year, we actually helped over 600 individuals over the shelter needs. I want to bring you the attention that when we talk about homelessness sector, it's much broader than the ones who need overnight sleep, because that's, if I could call that, that's the most complex, acute, high acuity one. You end up having nowhere to stay, either on the street or a warm place like shelter. But after that, when you talk about supportive housing unit in the community, you're talking about huge numbers. That part of that work is preventing people becoming homeless. Others are transition people from shelter into community support living, so they are out of the homeless stream. So you can tell, depending on how you are picking the number, whether it's the one don't have any place as we speak, or the one who are living in a supported environment, the numbers goes widely change. From the ministry's briefing to me, I've been at this for quite a while. Their actual number from last year in Edmonton is 600 people. But they projected that with 800 were probably in a quite capable position. But with this added new resources, we're bumping that to 1,280. Of course, you know, this is the best we can do from the information, the resources we can mobilize. Given COVID is such a dynamic, changing situation, nobody has a crystal ball to say precisely what will happen in a couple of weeks or months. But I can tell you the will from the government and the community partners, we're working together on this. We'll do everything possible we can to mitigate that.
Go ahead with your follow-up.
Yeah, switching gears, a question for the Premier. Have you been in touch with the BC Deputy Premier Mike Farnworth, and can you outline if and what resources will be arriving to help with the situation in BC, and what financial assistance might be available?
Thank you for the important question. I have not spoken to Deputy Premier Farnworth, but I have spoken to Premier Horgan twice in the last 2 days on calls with the premiers, and we've all extended our solidarity with the people of British Columbia. We've offered any support that Alberta can provide. I will be speaking again to Premier Horgan specifically on that later today. And I know that Minister McIver has reached out to his counterpart, the BC Minister of Municipal Affairs, to see if we can be helpful. As well, my Chief of Staff has reached out to Premier Horgan's Chief of Staff. So we've certainly done the outreach to just, first of all, just say on behalf of Alberta that we stand behind British Columbians who have been affected by these weather-related flooding and the damage. And, you know, so many Albertans are originally from BC. They have relatives and family there, so I know that we're all concerned. I was on a call yesterday with the Prime Minister and the other premiers. Once again, we all indicated to Premier Horgan our willingness to be helpful. That's more relevant to Alberta, perhaps, because this is going to affect us in a very direct way. As you know, the world economy was already dealing with supply chain challenges. This will become very acute now for Alberta and then the rest of Canada, with the destruction of parts of the Trans-Canada Highway and some other roadways, as well as the critical CP rail line. And I think the CN rail line has also been affected in some areas. And so a lot of the trucking and rail traffic that brings goods from the Port of Metro Vancouver to Alberta will now have to transit through the states of Washington and Montana to come back up. That's why I asked the Prime Minister yesterday to consider relaxing some of the COVID travel-related protocols for truckers and others who are coming north in terms of testing and other protocols. We need to make sure that we have to do everything we can to facilitate movement of those goods through the United States to come back north into Alberta. But our first concern is for those people whose lives and homes have been affected, and we just want to be there to support them morally and, if we can, in any way practically.
Bonjour, Monsieur Kenney, François Joly, Radio-Canada. A couple of questions for you. First one's already been asked, so I would just have you repeat a version of this in French. Do you really believe your government is doing enough with this announcement, knowing that this is a temporary announcement in terms of funding, and that the end goal for users of those shelters is a permanent housing? So do you really believe that there's enough that's being done for that?
I'll say, do you want me to say that in
Yes.
I'll say it in English and then French. Okay.
Suit yourself. Yeah, go ahead. Sorry.
No, I don't believe that this is sufficient. Today's announcement is about one immediate, acute, seasonal need that's driven by the COVID situation. But it is an acute need, and this is what Mayor Sohi asked of us, which was to focus on this immediate acute need, which, because we don't want people sleeping rough in a cold Edmonton winter. And that's partly what today's announcement is about, recognizing there are unique pressures on homeless shelters with COVID protocols. For various reasons, there's been growth in the homeless population, people coming from outside of the city, as you know, and very unfortunately, a significant number of the unhoused in Edmonton are Indigenous people who have left their own communities and come into the city. So we also need to work with Indigenous leaders and the federal government that is responsible for social services on reserves. So these are all complex issues. We think many of them are short-term. Now, the broader, deeper issue of homelessness needs a broader and deeper response. You're absolutely right about that, and that's why we are providing, as I've said, in this year's capital budget, $72 million in support for projects for housing, affordable housing in Edmonton alone, and through Minister Luan, through Community and Social Services, as I've mentioned, $89 million in support for community-based organizations addressing homelessness. So we've also appointed this task force to see what more do we need to do. So all of that together is part of our action. I'll try to summarize that in French. Non, l'annonce d'aujourd'hui n'est pas suffisante pour les besoins à long terme pour les gens sans hébergement, mais c'est une réponse à une situation urgente pour les sans-abri, et parce qu'évidemment, il y a une situation complexe avec la pandémie et l'hiver. Alors, nous répondons à le besoin urgent qui a été articulé par le maire Sohi, mais nous annonçons aujourd'hui également un groupe de travail pour identifier les autres actions pour aller plus profondément aux défis d'hébergement abordable. Mais nous continuons, comme le gouvernement de l'Alberta, à faire les investissements importants à cet égard, à Edmonton seulement, avec un investissement de 80 millions de dollars dans l'hébergement abordable et centaines de millions de dollars pour les services aux sans-abri.
All right, and again in French and English, and I didn't mean to be disrespectful when I said suit yourself, it's just my
okay.
bilingual brain.
C'est beau, je comprends.
All right, switching gear again to a different story. And again, I'll ask in English. UCP MLA Peter Gautry called for your resignation Monday. He is the second one to do so after Leela here, and who faced no consequences so far. So how can you have two MLAs in your caucus who are actively calling for your resignation?
You know, I believe I have the overwhelming support of our caucus. There will be a moment for a leadership review next year, which I fully support, part of our accountability process. I just encourage all of my colleagues to focus on the people's business, on the priorities of Albertans, not on internal politics. Last week, we had one of the best weeks in a decade in Alberta's economy with the announcement of $7 billion of new job-creating investments, the largest tech investment in our history, a new petrochem investment that will create 4,000 upfront jobs, an expansion of Alberta's irrigation system. We're leading the country in economic growth. Unemployment went down by nearly half a percentage point last month, according to StatsCan. We are leading the country in economic growth. We are projected to do so again next year. We saw the recent completion of the Line 3 pipeline project. This is a government that was elected to deliver on jobs, the economy, and pipelines. We are doing all three. But we were also elected to fight for a fair deal for Alberta, which we have done, importantly, through our recent referendum on equalization, but also to make life better for Albertans. And that's what today's announcement is about. That's what to support our homeless population. That's what Monday's announcement was about, the successful agreement that we have come to with the Government of Canada to create an additional 40,000 childcare spaces and reduce the cost of childcare in Alberta. So that is my focus. My focus is not on internal political disputes, but on delivering on our commitments to Albertans to grow the economy and make life better. And I'll try to say a summary in French. Écoutez, l'année dernière, il y aura, excusez-moi, l'année prochaine, il y aura une occasion pour les militants du Parti conservateur à voter sur mon leadership et je suis très ouverte à cette imputabilité dans notre parti, mais j'encourage tous mes collègues parlementaires à mettre l'accent sur les priorités des Albertains et pas les jeux politiques intérieurs, parce que notre gouvernement a été élu avec un mandat d'élargir l'économie, de faire mieux la vie pour les familles et pour lutter pour l'Alberta. Et comme vous pouvez voir, nous faisons toutes ces choses-là la semaine dernière avec 7 milliards de dollars de nouveaux investissements pour créer les emplois en Alberta, l'économie qui croît le plus vite au Canada, un gouvernement qui vient d'avoir un référendum sur la péréquation pour lutter pour les intérêts de l'Alberta. Et aujourd'hui, nous faisons une annonce importante pour faire mieux la vie pour les Albertains sans abri et lundi avec l'entente historique sur les garderies. Alors, ça veut dire que moi, je suis totalement axé sur les priorités des Albertains sur lesquelles nous étions élus et j'encourage tous mes collègues de faire la même chose.
Okay, we'll take our last question from the floor here before we jump over to the phones.
Hi, Dustin Cook, Post Media. My question is for the Premier. Hi, Premier. We know emergency shelters are a Band-Aid solution. You listed some investments, but the City of Edmonton has long been calling for permanent supportive housing supports. Will you commit to provide operating funding for the 5 supportive housing sites that will be opening early next year?
Well, again, we are providing funding for $80 million in this year's capital plan for affordable housing, $72 million for 384 more permanent housing units. So we are doing that. And in addition, we Capital Plan 2021 allocated $30 million over 3 years for the Indigenous Housing Capital Program with the construction of 81 additional units. And of course, through Community and Social Services, we provide province-wide hundreds of millions of dollars of support for the homeless and others facing challenges. And I finally would say that's one of the reasons we have this task force that we're setting up here to get a coordinated view of what the needs are. Because so much of this intersects with, I mean, to take high needs, very high needs homeless people who may have very complex mental health challenges or very serious addiction problems, simply to put them in a low-cost housing unit is not sufficient. We need to ensure, this is what Chief McPhee was talking about, we need to ensure minimal standards, and part of those standards have to be immediate access to relevant social services. So you take somebody who has, is having psychotic episodes and is not following their medical, their prescription regime, and who may be acting out violently, may be encountering the chief's constables on the street frequently, that kind of individual is likely not going to be successful in the long term in a conventional affordable housing unit. That kind of individual needs much deeper intervention and support. And that's one of the issues we're looking at. I know that some say, almost as you did, almost dismissively, that emergency shelters are, quote, a Band-Aid. Well, this Band-Aid has been saving lives for 92 years. There will always be a need, I believe, for emergency shelters for some folks who, for one reason or another, are not accessing more conventional housing support. So I think it's not either or, but it's both and.
Homelessness numbers in Edmonton and the province have been rising since the start of the pandemic. I'm wondering why the task force now, and when you would like to see action from that task force? Well,
Mayor Sohi came to me 2 weeks ago and expressed a sense of particular urgency about this winter and whether there would be adequate emergency shelter space. We've been in ongoing conversations, I must say, with the police and community organizations about the broader challenges, but it was Minister Luan's idea that we address all of this together with a intergovernmental task force. So the work, look, it's not like we're just starting to collaborate now, but we'll be doing so in a more formal and focused way over the next 6 months.
Thank you, Premier. Operator, can you please put through our first caller?
Rick Bell, Calgary Sun.
Good afternoon, Premier, and Mayor Sohi, who I've interviewed a few times. I'm going to be just very direct and point blank. This has been asked before, but I'm going to ask it maybe a little more directly. What is your response to the allegations contained in the Guthrie letter, including the allegation that there is a third-party PAC or more than one who support you and are offering to pay people to attend the AGM this weekend, as well as providing, quote, other favors in exchange for their votes at this week's convention? So could you very specifically, I know you did it at caucus, I've been told, could you respond to the allegations, including, but not just that one, but including that one?
Well, it's interesting you're being told about things that allegedly happened in the caucus, Rick, because that's supposed to be confidential. But the answer is I'm not involved in third-party organizations, but third-party political organizations are free within the law to be involved in politics. And my understanding is that, for example, delegate registration fees are not considered a contribution, but I would expect and insist that any group carefully acts within the regulations. All I can tell you, as long as I've been involved in politics, I've known, for example, youth delegates, often constituency associations provide support with delegate fees. Organizations have supported the attendance of youth delegates who can't afford to go and things like that. That's hardly new. I think it's conventional in most parties, and I would expect fully that any organization involved is carefully following all of the relevant rules.
And Rick, do you have a follow-up today?
Yes, thank you. He made, I'm not going to itemize them, you know what the letter says. There's other concerns that MLA has. He's not the only MLA. You say you have the support of the vast majority of MLAs, and I won't question that, but I do hear from a lot of MLAs. Does it cause you to actually reflect on your situation, Premier, when you have constituencies who want an earlier review, you have MLAs speaking out, you have MLAs that are speaking, they might not be on the record yet, but they're also speaking to people outside your caucus. I mean, is there any concern? Do you ever sit back at 3 o'clock in the morning and think, maybe there's something I should do, that this is a symptom of something wrong in your government? Do you ever think that? Because a lot of people ask me that.
Well, Rick, what I focus on is the priority of Albertans, getting the job done. 2 weeks ago, the Mayor of Edmonton came to me with an urgent plea to help avoid a potential catastrophe for homeless people in Edmonton. And I worked around the clock with my office, with Minister Luan and others to get to this critical announcement today. That's the kind of thing I focused my attention on. This past weekend, I and my office were working very closely with Minister Schultz and the Government of Canada to get to the best possible deal on an historic child care agreement. I spend many of my waking hours working on bringing more investment to Alberta. Last week, I don't know if you wrote a column about this, Rick, because maybe it's too fun and easy just to write about people who are angry with the government over COVID policy. I know you've been doing that for a couple of years. Good for you. But I'd challenge you maybe to find space, I don't know, a paragraph, pardon me, about one of the biggest weeks in the history of the Alberta economy. I know it's a small deal. $7 billion in new investment last week, the largest tech investment by orders of magnitude in the history of Alberta, a transformative announcement. There will be 1,000 people in Calgary, maybe some of your readers, able to put food on the table because of that announcement, and thousands more who will have opportunities in the digital sector created indirectly by that announcement. There will be 4,000 people up in the Peace Country able to put food on the table thanks to the Northern Petrochemicals ammonia plant that we announced last week. There will be thousands of farmers getting better yields and having more sustainable agriculture as a result of the $117 million announcement that I made in irrigation infrastructure last week, Rick. Those are the issues that I stay up at 3 in the morning focusing on and thinking about.
Okay, thank you, Premier. Just because we're running up against question period, we only have time for about one more call today. So, operator, can you please put through our last call?
Tyson Fetter, CTV Calgary. This question is for the Premier, just in regards to the BC ongoing situation. Have you received a request yet for assistance from Premier Horgan? And can you elaborate in regards to what type of assistance would be available to BC once that request comes through, if it hasn't so far?
Sure. Sorry, just something in my throat there. So we have not received a specific request from BC. As I've said, I've been in meetings with Premier Horgan both on Monday and Tuesday. We'll be speaking once again directly to him today. We've reached out through various ministries and my office to his office, and to the best of my knowledge, we've not yet received a specific request, but we will be willing to respond in any way that we can to provide resources and assistance to British Columbia. So I look forward to speaking again further to Premier Horgan later today in that respect.
And do you have a follow-up today?
Yeah, there is, just in regards to that, so no specific resources that you could mention at this time?
Well, we don't know, but perhaps there's heavy equipment that we could provide to help them accelerate the repair of some of their roadways, and that's why we've asked the Transportation Ministry to reach out. Perhaps there is emergency support that we could provide to some of the communities in the BC Mountain interior that may be stranded or facing a flood situation. We're always there to support our neighbours. This past summer, when BC was facing a serious forest fire situation, we deployed many of Alberta's wildfire fighters to help out in British Columbia. And if there are any particular needs, we'll be there. I don't know if BC has yet called upon the Canadian Armed Forces, but as you know, they don't have a regular army base there. But I would fully expect that if the Government of Canada deploys military, many of them would likely be coming from CFB Edmonton. So, but in any event, anything we can do, we want to be helpful. We just haven't had a specific request that I know of up to this point.
Thanks, folks. That concludes our media.
Can I just thank Bruce and all the folks from Hope Mission once again for hosting us? I hope we didn't cause you guys any inconvenience. Thank you. Thank you very much.